Tonight we are continuing our series, walking through the stories of some of the well-known and lesser well-known women of the Bible. Last week we talked about Rahab and how she played a pivotal role in the people's entry into the land. It was really through her that they were able to defeat Jericho. Now, as our story continues, from there the people continue to move into the land. You have other small city-states, small kingdoms. Nothing big at this time right now. Everything's dealing kind of almost city level. Those things are falling. The people kind of settle into the land. And this ushers in what we call the time of the Judges. We read most about this, fittingly enough, in the book of Judges. Now, the book of Judges pitted against the book of Joshua give us an interesting dynamic. So Joshua shows us this fast-paced blitzkrieg military campaign. It is almost like a greatest hits. There is very little defeat in Joshua. It is just bam, 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 win, 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 we're settled. Judges highlights the day-to-day struggle, kind of the actual reality of what was going on throughout the days. Joshua's your quick hit, this is our greatest hits. Judges is, okay, let's slow down and see, there's a lot of defeats in here. There's a lot of battles we lost. It wasn't we move in and everything's hunky-dory. There was a lot of time of dissent, fighting, going back and forth. And what Judges really highlights is that the people at this time are not Israel. They are not a unified country. They don't get to that for a long time. They are really a group of small tribes. The best maybe analogy is think of the Greek city-states. They are all very independent. The tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of Gad, Asher, all of them, they're doing their own thing. They'll team up sometimes, and we'll see in our story today, if there's a bigger threat coming up. Maybe some of the ones that live by each other, they'll team up. But for the most part, they're kind of on their own. They care about themselves. Now, this loose confederation is ruled over by what are known as judges. And this is a common title. This isn't unique to the Bible. This term, shofat, the judge, was a common title throughout the ancient Near East across a lot of cultures. And it is a moniker given to mostly military leaders. Despite the name that we think of as judge, they do very little judicial judging. The best way to maybe think about them is if you have a small town in which the mayor and the chief of police are the same person. That might be your equivalent of your judge. Now, these judges are, again, very regional, very localized. You don't have a judge ruling over all of Israel. You have judges ruling over very small little areas. So, our story today is about the judge Deborah. So to start with, I'll just kind of read the intro to her story, and then we'll kind of background info, and we'll kind of walk through it together. So this is Judges chapter 4, and I'm going to start in verse 4. At that time, Deborah, a prophet, woman of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, where the Israelites came to her for judgments. Interestingly enough, Deborah is one of the only judges to get the moniker prophet. Normally, those are two distinct roles. Deborah combines them, so she is called out as a prophet. As we talked about a couple weeks ago, there's not very many women that get this title. Deborah's one of them. Another part that people kind of go back and forth on is this line here. I scroll down too far. The woman of Lapidoth. Lapidoth is a proper noun. We know that. It is uncertain whether that is a person or a city. So this is either denotating that she is the wife of a guy named Lapidoth or is a citizen of a town, Lapidoth. Either way, but we're not entirely sure, but that's why some Bibles you'll see will translate this wife of, some will translate it citizen of. This one just took the generic middle road, woman of, so you could take it either way. But that's all kind of that is there. Now, if you notice, I did talk about that most judges don't judge in the sense we think of. Deborah's our big exception to that. As we saw in the verse, she kind of sits under a tree. She has her established spot. People come to her, and she makes judgments. She decides cases. Now, this kind of harkens back to Moses, because Moses did this exact same thing. He would have his tent set up. People would come to him with legal issues, with kind of cultural issues, fights, squabbles, anything, and he would be the deciding person. So Deborah is doing that for the people, as well as kind of acting as their mayor in a way. So as the situation is set up, Deborah, as we talked about, is ruling up in the north. At this time, the Canaanite king Jabin is in power, and he is set up in the city of Hazor. Oh, get my laser pointer. Up here in the north, this big arrow is Hazor. For reference, we have Hazor here, we have Dead Sea, Sea of Galilee. Jericho was right down here, so we talked about last time. Bethlehem, all that are down here. So just kind of orient yourself a little bit. So we're mostly dealing way up here in the north. Now, he sets up his base up here in the north and is really causing issues for the northern tribes. His general is a guy named Siestra. Now, there's a very good chance I will call him Siestro throughout it, because that is a comic book bad guy, and in my head, I always call them back and forth. So if I do that, I apologize, but his name is Sestra, S-I-S-E-R-A. God tells Deborah to summon this guy, Barak, to come forward and says, I have a message for Barak. Call to him, let's do this. So Deborah calls him out and says, gather an army. Gather the people, the local tribes up, and go up to, my laser pointer here, go up here to Kidrith, which is just up here to the north. Go up to the mountain, and I will lure the armies of Jabin, led by Siestra, out, and you'll crush them. Now, what I think is interesting here is this is setting up a parallel dichotomy. So on one side, you have King Jabin, General Siestra. On the other side, you have Judge Deborah, General Barak. So you're getting this dynamic of a government person and a military or warrior person kind of pitting against each other. So kind of pay attention to that throughout the story, because the story is all about these kind of dynamic forces at play, going back and forth here, kind of this symmetry going on. This message is delivered. Barak doesn't quite take it as we might expect. So Barak answers and says, if you go with me, then I will go. But if you do not go with me, I will not go. And so Deborah said, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Siestra into the hand of a woman. Then Deborah got up and went with Barak to Kadesh. Now, this is an interesting response. Now, it's uncertain why he makes this request. He seems to want constant contact with God that he knows Deborah provides. Is it he doesn't trust his connection with God? He's like, well, God won't talk to me. Is it he doesn't trust God at all? God has said he will be with me if I go out and do this, but do I trust that? Does he not trust his own prowess? We don't know why. Whatever the reason, he does not want to go out into this battle without Deborah. And if you notice, Deborah agrees. He says, yes, I'll go, but calls him out on it. And says, this was supposed to be your crowning achievement. This battle was supposed to be the thing that brought you all this glory through God. But because you're not trusting God, whatever it is, because you're not following what God said, you're not going to get the glory of this battle. You're going to fight it, but someone else is going to be remembered for winning it. As the story goes on, things play out exactly as Deborah says. Barak takes the troops. They go up the mountain. They sit there. Siestra hears about it. Thinks, I can beat them up there. If I can get my troops up there first, I can cut them off. I'll have the advantage. Deborah wakes Barak up and frantically tells him, scramble your troops now. You have the advantage. Go. So they do. Anyone who has ever seen any Star Wars movie knows, how do you win something? You have the high ground. And that's what they had. They were already up the mountain, so when Siestra comes up, they already had position, and they crushed the armies really, really quickly. Siestra is caught off guard, does not know they're already there, gets routed. But Siestra himself escapes. He gets off and flees on foot. As he is fleeing, he runs past the house of Jael. And this passage sets up a well-established trope at the time. The trope is a defeated military general fleeing a battle, coming across the home of a woman, most of the time whose husband was in the battle. And it never ends well for the woman. You can imagine how these tropes always play out. So as it's set up, we're like, oh no, we kind of have an idea how this is what's going to happen. But notice how things play out. This is verse 18. Pay attention to the verbiage that is used here and who is doing, or who is in control. Jael came out to meet Siestra and said to him, "Turn aside, my lord. Turn aside to me. Have no fear." So he turned aside to her into her tent, and she covered him with a rug. This is unusual. She is the one controlling the narrative. She is the one in charge. This is not how these tropes, how these stories normally go. She's the one who makes contact. She's the one who calls him over. She's the one who invites him in the tent. This is throwing off everything that we've taught to expect with this trope. As the story goes on, Siestra asks for a drink. Basically says, I just got my butt whooped. I'm thirsty. Can I have something to drink? So she gives him some milk, and he is falling asleep. Before he falls asleep, he says, can you watch the door? Guard the door. If anyone comes, you haven't seen me. I'm not here. He falls asleep. We as a reader are uncertain about what's happening here. What is Jael's endgame? She is not Israelite. The text makes that clear. She's a Kenite. And the text talks about the specific tribe of Kenites that she belongs to is currently at peace with Jabin, the king. So she has no issue. They're not fighting. So is she against Israel? What is her play here? Well, we find out very quickly. This is verse 21. But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg, took a hammer in her hand, and went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down to the ground. He was lying fast asleep from weariness, and he died. Well, that escalated real fast. And by the way, I do love this picture here, because look how jacked they made her in this picture. Like, she's got arms. Those traps that she has there, she's doing like 600-pound shrugs to get those. That picture just made me laugh so much how ripped they made her. But okay, this is not what we expected at all. We literally have the trope flipped upside down. Now, it is kind of crude, but a lot of commentaries point out that the trope is normally a woman forcibly being penetrated. In this case, it's the other way around. Jael is doing the forcible penetration, only it's with a tent peg through the head. So they're taking this trope and completely inverting it, completely flipping it around. As the story goes on, Barak shows up, chasing Siestra, comes to the tent and asks, hey, have you seen him? Do you know anything? And the verbiage that is used is almost identical to how she talks to Siestra. And so when you're reading it the first time, you're like, oh no, is she going to do it again? Oh no. She doesn't. She brings him in and is like, there's the person you're looking for. I have won your war. And so what's interesting is that things play out exactly as Deborah predicted. Deborah's prophecy comes entirely true. The glory of Siestra's defeat comes at the hand of a woman. At the beginning, we assumed it was going to be Deborah, but it wasn't. But it was still set up from the very beginning. The opposition that we talked about, having a government person and a military or a warrior person going head to head, still plays out. Only it's Deborah and Jael. Jael is remembered as the warrior that killed the warrior of the enemies, not Barak. Barak is entirely cut out from this dynamic. And we see this play out even more in the next chapter. Chapter 5 of Judges is a war anthem. It is a psalm talking about this battle. It's a retelling of chapter 4, which is the narrative version. Chapter 5 is the psalm poetic version. What's interesting is that this section, most of the earliest organized religious texts at the time are memorized songs and hymns. So if you recall, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Song of Miriam or the Song of the Sea. That and this section here, chapter 5, Judges chapter 5, are the two oldest extant sections of the Hebrew Bible we have. From language and other literary devices, we can tell they are much older than a lot of the other sections. I think that's just an interesting dynamic, that these are some of the oldest text we have. So it is a retelling of chapter 4, or if you want to be pedantic, chapter 4 is a retelling of this, because this one came earlier, but text-wise, this one comes second. And it gives the story a lot more poetic flourishes, a lot more kind of flowery poetic language, a lot more metaphor. It expands kind of the story quite a bit. But what I think is really interesting about it is its name. Most modern Bibles will refer to this as the Song of Deborah. Those titles are added much, 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 much later. Some of the, like every translation will have its own kind of version of the title. But some of the earliest titles of this we have from what amount to be like New Testament times even, so from like Dead Sea Scrolls and such, refer to this as the Song of Deborah and Jael. So from the earliest times, it was these two together. And if you read through this, it's clear Deborah is the main character. She gets by far the most mentions. But the entire second half is about Jael. Barak is by far the tertiary character, barely mentioned at all in the oldest text we have. He's not there, barely. It's Deborah, and arguably, Jael, you could say, is the main character. Because in fact, if we jump into this chapter, verse 24, we read this. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, the tent-dwelling woman most blessed. That phrase is only used one other time in the entire Bible. Can anyone think of when it is? Most blessed of women. Ring any bells? Any guesses? Any guesses? Mary. The nativity story is the only other time we get this reference. So most scholars argue that when it's used in Mary, it's referencing this hymn, this song, referencing Jael. Most blessed of women. So that is the story of Deborah and Jael and how they fought off the armies of Jabin coming down from the north to kick off the people. A relatively small story. Like a lot of these are just, one chapter. This one happens to be 2 chapters spread out, but a larger emphasis. So, as we move to a time of questions, online people, we will see you all next week. Be back here. I already got figured out what we're doing. It's going to be good. You'll like it. So we will see you all next week. Goodbye.